Welcome back, everybody, and happy Tuesday. Today we're going to be looking at equivalent fractions. So before we left school, we had talked a lot about equivalent fractions. Today we're going to focus on reviewing what an equivalent fraction is and finding equivalent fractions within models. Let's start here. Equivalent fractions have the same value even though they look different. They show the same amount in different ways. Tristan uses waffles to help Mason and Sophie understand equivalent fractions. Tristan shows his friends that 1/2 is equal to 2/4. Tristan cuts one waffle into 2 pieces. Each section of the waffle is 1/2. Tristan cuts another waffle into 4 pieces. Each section of the waffle is 1/4 of the waffle. 2 sections are 2/4. When we look at this model, we can see that 2/4 is the same size as 1/2, even though they're different fractions, making 1/2 equal to 2/4. Tristan shows his friends that 4/6 is equal to 2/3. Tristan cuts one waffle into 6 pieces. Each section of waffle is 1/6 of the waffle. 4 sections are 4/6. Tristan cuts one waffle into 3 pieces. Each section of the waffle is 1/3 of the waffle. 2 sections are 2/3. So once again, when I look at 4/6, I can see it's the exact same size as 2/3. That means 4/6 is equal to 2/3. Let's try it with our own models. Jaden bakes a chocolate cake and Maria bakes a vanilla cake. Jaden eats 1/4 of his cake and Maria eats 2/8 of her cake. Jaden thinks he has eaten more cake. Do you agree or disagree? Let's start by looking at our models. I'm going to make sure I label each piece of the cake so I know which one I'm talking about. This piece has 4 equal sized pieces and 1 shaded in. So this must be Jaden's chocolate cake because this fraction is 1/4. This cake has 8 equal sized pieces, and 2 of those pieces are shaded. 2 parts of the fraction are shaded. So this must be Maria's cake, where she ate 2/8. Now, right now I might not be able to tell which person ate more, but I have a couple of different strategies that can help us figure it out. For one, I'm just going to start by shading these 2 pieces in and looking at them together. When I shade in 2/8 all the way, I see I'm left with 1/4. They're the exact same size, which must mean 1/4 is actually equal to 2/8. Another way we can think about this is actually creating fourths in our second model. So right now, we already know Jaden has fourths. Ooh, excuse me, friends. Let's see how we could break Maria's circle into fourths. I'm going to start by cutting it in half and then cutting it in half again. Let's make sure I have equal sized pieces. And actually, we'll make this even darker. Now I have fourths. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Each of those fourths is made up of 2/8, which must mean 1/4 again is equal to 2/8. The last strategy I could use to help me figure out these two fractions are equal is I can partition fourths into eighths because I know eighths are half of fourths. Let's try it out. I'm going to use a darker color again. I'm going to cut each of my fourths in half. And once I've cut my fourths in half, I can see that once this piece that was 1/4 is now 2/8. 1/4 is equal to 2/8. So sorry, Jaden, I have to disagree. You two ate the same amount of cake. Let's try another example. Jaden and Maria want to know how to show 1/2 using their different fractions. How can Maria and Jaden represent 1/2 in their models? I know if I cut these circles right down the middle, I'm going to end up with 1/2. Now, you might be able to tell right now, I don't have 1/2 yet because I still have to finish shading. So let's shade the pieces necessary to get to 1/2, starting with this one. In this model, I only had to shade 1/4 to get to 1/2. That means 2/4 is equal to 1/2. Now let's shade in Maria's model until she has half of her model filled in. And one more. In Maria's model, we had to shade 2 more pieces. I know this model represents eighths. So right now, I have 4/8 shaded in. That means 4/8 is equal to 1/2. In your practice problems today, you'll be practicing turning models or finding equivalent fractions in fraction models. That was a mouthful. Sorry, friends. Give it your best shot. Good luck and see you tomorrow.